Moving to Chicago can definitely be a little intimidating regardless of where you come from. Like other big cities, it's definitely got its own unique quirks, and there are several things that I wish I knew before I fully moved here. So in this video, we're going to go over exactly what those things are so that you can be ready for when you move to Chicago. Hi, my name is Peter and I'm a realtor here in the Chicago metro area. If you're thinking about moving here or want some general information about what it's like to live here, feel free to reach out. All my contact info is down below. I'm always happy to help. One thing that you should know about before moving to Chicago is that you don't actually have to live on the north side of the city. Sure, many of the city's most desirable neighborhoods are located on the north side. However, the city still has some fantastic neighborhoods in the south and west sides as well that are oftentimes going to be a lot more affordable. For example, Hyde Park on the city's south side, which is home to the University of Chicago, and was recently named one of the coolest neighborhoods in the world by Time Out magazine. And on the west side of the city, you'll have neighborhoods such as Westtown and Ukrainian Village, which are home to some of the best eateries in all of Chicago. Both of these neighborhoods should definitely be on your list if you're considering to move here, so don't only look on the north side. In fact, if you can, I highly recommend visiting as many neighborhoods as you possibly can before you actually move here, because each one of them has a very distinct feel to them. You may find that you were really excited about one neighborhood, but then when you actually got there, you realized it's not quite the right fit for you. And then on the flip side, you may visit a neighborhood that you didn't think too highly of and be very, very surprised. So it's worth visiting as many as you can. Now, when it comes to where you live, another thing that you should know before moving to Chicago is that you're going to want to be as close to the lake as possible. In my opinion, the lakefront is one of the best amenities about Chicago, and I didn't fully begin to appreciate it until I moved here. Fortunately, I moved within a 10-minute walk of the lake, and honestly, I can't see myself living any further from it than where I currently do now. And I find that with many of my friends and clients, those that do live further from the lake oftentimes regret not moving a little bit closer. The lake is perfect for running, biking, walking, and especially if you have a dog, you'll be very thankful that you're nearby. And also in the summer, you can easily take advantage of the various beaches that are along the lake, as well as a lot of the farmers markets that go on during the weekends. Okay, moving on to the next thing you should know about Chicago before moving here. It's going to be about the winters, because as you've probably heard, Chicago does get very, very cold during the winter months. That being said, your perception of the cold is going to be very different based on how you prepare for it. If all you have in your wardrobe is a light jacket and some mittens, you'll absolutely hate the winters here. But if you know how to layer, have proper boots, gloves, coats, scarves, and hats, then actually the winter is completely manageable here. Sure, you may look a little silly wearing all of that at once and being all bundled up. However, it's totally worth it to feel comfortable. So making sure you're dressed appropriately for the winter is one thing, but I would also add that if you can swing it, I highly recommend leaving in January or February to a warmer climate for at least a weekend, ideally a week if possible. Those are some of the coldest months of the year, and since they're after the holidays, there's just not a lot going on. So a quick trip to Florida, Arizona, or somewhere tropical will feel fantastic. In fact, when you move here, you'll notice that a lot of your friends will probably take vacation around that time of year. The next thing you should know before moving to Chicago is that it's one of the few cities in the country that has practical and reliable public transportation. If you're somebody that doesn't have a car or would rather ditch their car and just live car free, that lifestyle is completely possible here. If you do plan on using public transportation, then I highly recommend living no more than a 15-minute walk away from an L stop, which are the elevated trains that go all throughout Chicago. With those, you can easily take a trip downtown into the city or to various other neighborhoods throughout. And if the train can't quite get you to where it is that you're going, there's a good chance that the bus can. So learning how to use the two will be very important because they'll get you nearly anywhere in the city. Overall, just keep in mind that having a car here is completely optional. Now, if you do plan or must have a car in the city, there's a couple things you need to know before moving to Chicago with one. You'll definitely want to be aware of parking signs, tow signs, speed radars, and city and plate sticker renewals. If it sounds like a lot, it's because there is. Failing to pay attention to all of that will result in a lot of headaches and potentially even worse, a lot of fines. So make sure you do a lot of research into the neighborhood you're moving to in terms of what permits they may require if you have a car. And in general, when you're here driving, just pay attention to all the signs. And here's a pro tip: if you find a lot and you aren't quite sure if you're allowed to park there or not, I recommend avoiding it entirely, because there are many tow companies out there that are looking for that sort of thing and will not hesitate to tow you out of there. there. Also, although it may be a little more expensive, I highly recommend either purchasing or renting a covered garage parking spot. Not only is it great for weather because you don't have to walk out to your car in the middle of a snowstorm or a lot of rain, but also cars in Chicago definitely take a beating, whether it's through potholes or just a lot of bad drivers. So I think you'll sleep better at night knowing that your car is safe and protected. Okay, the next thing to know about Chicago before moving here is that it's really easy to spend more money than you'd like to here. Especially if you're moving here from somewhere that's a lot more suburban or even rural. You'll have a lot more amenities and things nearby when you live in Chicago, and it's gonna make it a lot easier to spend more money than you initially intended to. For example, when I lived in the suburbs, I typically only eat out once a week, maybe twice at most. However, now that I'm in the city, I find that it's a lot more tempting and a lot easier to get lunch or dinner 3 to 4 to maybe even 5 times a week, depending on what's going on. You likely have a lot of great restaurants within just a 5 to 10 minute walk of where you live, so it is so much easier to just get up, walk over and buy something instead of making it yourself. There's definitely gonna be a lot of new things that are consistently gonna be coming up that you're gonna wanna try, whether that's a restaurant, a bar, a store, or just any of the various events that go on through the city. In general, just expect to spend a little bit more money than you probably currently do, or just be prepared to budget very heavily. Okay, and the last thing you should know before moving to Chicago is regarding the crime and safety, because let's face it, this is a topic that comes up a lot, and Chicago doesn't have a fantastic reputation for it. Like other big cities in the country, Chicago is definitely feeling and seeing an uptick in crime throughout the city. That being said, I find that what's shown on the news and what's talked about online is not a good representation of what's actually happening here. I find that people who are not from Chicago think that the second you step foot on city property, you're gonna immediately be a victim of crime. And that is just completely overblown. For the most part, crime is still concentrated within just a few neighborhoods in Chicago, but I highly recommend doing a lot of research into the neighborhood that you'll be moving into, just so you know what those statistics are like. That being said, as long as you're smart about where it is that you're going and what you're doing, you can live in Chicago completely safe. So there you have it. There was a quick list of some of the things that you should definitely know about Chicago before actually settling down here. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. And if you're looking to learn a little bit more about what it is like to live in Chicago, feel free to watch a lot of my other videos where I go a lot more in depth about other topics. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.